Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to echo a happy Mother's Day to you. If it wasn't for mothers, we wouldn't be here. Erin has a shirt that she'll wear sometimes that says, Mama Boys. Less drama than girls, but harder to keep alive. That's true. Mom of boys especially have a hard time at the very beginning, for sure. I think maybe the roles may be reversed around the time they turn 13 or 14, when the girls start to be a little bit harder to deal with. But moms certainly play a very important role in the home. We're going to look at a couple of examples this morning of some moms in the Bible that play a very important role both spiritually and physically in bringing up children and playing their part in God's faith for the home and raising up children in His name to grow up to be Christians and productive members in the church. As we read there in 2 Timothy 1:5, Paul is paying a compliment to Timothy's grandmother and his mother and instilling that faith in their grandson and son, of raising him and teaching him the things that are necessary and important to God. And later on, he played a vital role in a number of congregations' success in the early years of the church. And Paul's complimenting Timothy, but really it's a compliment to his upbringing, his parents. And it is interesting, as we're going to look here in a few minutes. The role of the father in the home that's prescribed in the Bible is to be the spiritual leader of the home. But oftentimes, usually if you see a missing parent in a congregation, it's the mom or the grandmother that's bringing the children. And I think that speaks volumes to the attitude of mothers in putting spiritual things first and being a leader in a supportive way in the home of encouraging God to be put first in the home. As a husband and a father, there's a lot of things that I worry about that I shouldn't worry about. And it's my wife and the mother who oftentimes will keep what's important in the center, and that's God. As we start this, I want to look at Luke chapter 4. And we're going to go back a couple of chapters after we look at Luke chapter 4 and see Jesus coming back to his hometown after being away and kind of becoming famous. And he comes back, and just this little thing that I want to point out here, and I may have pointed it out before from one of my other lessons, so we won't spend a lot of time on it, but we see Jesus is not just someone who would have been spiritual because he was the Son of God, but he was spiritual because he was brought up to be a leader in the church. As he goes back to Nazareth and he's there in the synagogue, which would have been the first century's kind of local congregation, and where the Jews would usually go and they would worship on a regular basis. And he goes there, and he's not just a face in the crowd. He doesn't just show up and he's here and he's wanting to meet everybody that he's missed and just sort of hang out in the back. But we see Jesus in Luke chapter 4, there in verse 16 and following, he gets up. And he stood up to read. And he picks a specific passage of Scripture. And like many times with these scenes that we see in both the Old and the New Testament, we read that and we don't really think, other than the main objective of this, I believe, in the Gospels, is to show that Jesus is the one being talked about there in Isaiah as he stands up to read this scroll. That's the main drive of this passage, but really the background behind it is that he was brought up to do that kind of thing. He wasn't brought up just to show up on Sundays or Saturday and live the rest of his life the way he wanted to, but he was brought up to be an active and involved leader in the congregation. And it's very evident here in the fact that he felt comfortable getting up and doing that. We see in chapter 2, we're going to look at a couple of moms here. We're going to look at Mary, Jesus' mother. In Luke chapter 2, this scene here is they go they go to Jerusalem every year like they're supposed to, or a couple times a year is really what it is. And like many of us, Jesus got left at the church building. They go and they think that Jesus is there with somebody else in the party. I know that was a common occurrence in my family, and thinking, my parents thought that we went home with a friend or grandparents who lived right next door, and they'd get halfway down the road and realize that one of them, or two, or three, were missing. That's a little quiet back there. What's going on? And now it says Jesus' parents, but I don't want to put something that's not in the Bible. But I think it's a fair assumption that it was Mary that probably realized that Jesus was missing before his dad did. I believe this is the last time we really hear anything about Jesus' earthly father. Mary shows up multiple times in the Gospels, but this is the last scene that we really see Joseph. And the way Mary talked, well, your father and I were looking for you in distress. If he was anything like me, we were in Orlando for the last leaders conventions a couple of weeks ago, and I just started to walk away, and I think it was my mom, because Aaron wasn't there. Wait, where's Colin? Oh, I'm supposed to be watching him. I mean, we're in a big hotel in Orlando, and I just start to walk away and forget I'm even supposed to be watching Colin. That's a mom right there. The dad is just like, well, he's fed, he's clothed, all right, let's go. But the mom is the one. I know, at least in my family, it was always my mom that would remember, hey, one of them's missing. One of them's lost. Yeah, I'm going to be concerned. I'm going to look frantically. But really, it's the mama that's the most concerned. When we see Jesus there in the temple, asking questions and answering questions. And when she shows up, they're kind of baffled. Like, well, what do you mean you must be about your father's business? Why wouldn't we be worried about looking for you? But Jesus was brought up to put God first. He was brought up in a godly home. And we see his parents there doing those kinds of things with him. Let's go back to the Old Testament now. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, we're introduced to a family, specifically this mom, Hannah, who was in a tough family situation, as it were. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about Hannah's marital relationship with her husband and his other wife, but she was barren. She didn't have any kids. It was upsetting to her. And she's there praying at the synagogue, praying, and in fact, Eli, the high priest at the time and the judge of Israel, thinks at first that she's drunk because she's talking, but nothing's coming, no words, or he doesn't hear her saying anything. But really, she was just that deep in prayer that she's mouthing the words. She so desperately wants a baby. She so desperately wants a child. She promises the child to the Lord. And when she was blessed with having a child, she kept her promise. We see in verse 10 through 18 that she makes this promise, and then verse 24 through 28, she keeps the promise, and Samuel is raised in the house of the Lord. She raised him, not just, I say she raised him, because I do believe that she did play an important role in his life, even after he went to live at the tabernacle, or the synagogue. Because every year at least, she would come and bring a new little outfit for him to wear. Every year she would do that. And while she devoted him to the Lord, into the service of the Lord, to be raised up to be a priest, she continued to be involved in his life in a positive way. We're not really told about the father. And I don't know that that's intentional or not. I don't know. But we do see the mom as the one that continues that relationship long after she was no longer responsible on a daily basis for him. We were at the beach yesterday, camped out at Anastasia State Park. I went out after school on Friday, and they'd already been out with my parents, and Aaron had all the kids out there. And so we went out to the beach, and it wasn't too bad. It was low tide, and there was a lot of people around, and I'm sitting back, and so, you know, I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it drops really quick. I mean, it's a good 15-foot drop at low tide. Well, I'm sitting up. I don't want to have to move the stuff again. So we're sitting back on more of the dry sand. I mean, it was going to be another 6 hours before the tide came back, but I'm thinking, I don't want to move it again. I'm tired. I hadn't been home. Slept terrible the night before, so I'm just going to plop down and sit on the beach. Watch the waves. I can see the kids. They're out, I don't know, it was probably 50 yards. And they're out there, and we told them, well, you don't go out there. And eventually Aaron says, I can't. I got to go. I can't make it from here to there. And of course, you know, she says I can't because, I mean, the water was 75 degrees. And I eventually went out there and I said, listen, I need you to know something. Because there's that little, almost like a creek that comes through there. And it was knee deep. And I walked through that and it was flowing. And I almost fell in. And I'm thinking, I'm not getting in this water. I can't believe the kids are getting in the water. And I get out there and I said, I need you to know something. That if they need rescuing, it might be you that needs to do it. Now, I was being sarcastic, but at the same time, I wouldn't have beat her out there anyway. She's the one. I'm thinking, well, if one of them get eaten by a shark, we still got the other two. You know, I mean, nothing really bad's going to happen out here anyway, but, you know, moms have a serious connection with the babies, don't they? Deeper than the father. I remember my dad, when we were growing up, he was working on his doctorate degree, and my mom had gone off, I don't know where she was, but she needed to get away from us because we were generally well behaved, but we were the kind of kids that would walk through, and this is when, like, Winn-Dixie and Publix would have the fish out on the ice, and we would get the fishy smelling ice and put it down each other's back, or, you know, take the pins out of the clothes at JCPenney's and poke each other with them. We were those kids. But she had left, and I don't know, my dad was gone. We were not old enough really to be left at the house, but I mean, to kind of get the idea, it's not like we were being neglected because my grandparents lived right next door and it was just this big piece of property and we'd tear all over that place anyway. I had no idea where my dad was. And I had to go to the bathroom. Well, my oldest brother helped take care of that, and it was not a pleasant experience. And of course, when my mom got home, she was not happy. Not with us, but with my dad. Well, you left him? He was just next door printing off some stuff for his doctorate degree. We didn't know where he was. We were just outside playing, and all of a sudden we need to get in, and the house is locked up. And so we sort of fend for ourselves. I'm kind of the same way. When Aaron left to go out of town with my mom and some other ladies from church for a week, I stayed home with the kids. And it was great. They didn't eat anything all day. I had the water bottles out for them, and there's some food, and it was a great time. But as soon as she walks in, you would have thought that I hadn't taken care of all week. They needed all kinds of stuff. And it's like that even if she's gone for an afternoon and she comes home, and all of a sudden, they need everything. They need a hug. They need to sit and cuddle. They need to do all these things that they don't want to do with me, for one. I don't know if it's because they think I'm going to get on to them or what, but they hadn't said anything. They've just been playing. I didn't think they needed to eat. They didn't ask for any food. Mamas take care of their children. Jochebed in Exodus, we're not told much about Moses' parents. Amram and Jochebed were their parents, but we see in Exodus 2 where a mom goes above and beyond almost. Not even really, when you think about it, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think most moms would make the same decision that she made, where the decree goes out from Pharaoh that all of the Israelite sons from a certain age are going to be thrown into the Nile River, which has some really big alligators in it, by the way. They either drowned or eaten by alligators. That's the law. Jochebed hit him and hit him and hit him until she didn't think she could get away with it anymore. And so instead of complying, she made a real effort to rescue her son here. Makes him this little boat, sends her daughter out to go and watch over him, saving her son. I mean, my wife's the same way. She's killed how thing was like 5 feet long, cottonmouth, with a shovel. I would have done the same thing if I had been there, but I would have done it with a shovel. That's too close. I need something that's got some reach to it. Okay? But this snake was there. The kids were out playing. She killed another one the other day. I don't think it was a cottonmouth, but I'm terrified of snakes, but I'd have done it if I had been there. But she's fearless. She gets the snakes that get in the house out. Thankfully, there was just one that I know of. If I thought there were snakes in the house, burn the place down. We see another mother, Zipporah, Moses' wife. This is after he's lived in Pharaoh's house and left Pharaoh's house and killed the guard and has fled into the wilderness. And now he's married to this Midianite woman, Zipporah. And he has 2 children, 2 sons. And the sign of the covenant between God and his people was circumcision. Well, the first son that was done to, but the second one, apparently it was not. And this is kind of a weird scene here in chapter 4. When you look at it, it's almost confusing because he's talking about Pharaoh and Moses going into Egypt and performing all these miracles that God has given him the power to do. But then it changes to where they're going on the road. And he says there in Exodus chapter 4, verse 24, it came to pass on the way as they're going from where they were to where they were going to Egypt. At this encampment that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Talk about Moses. What's going on? Just the verses before, God's talking to Moses about being this leader of his people to rescue them from slavery. About he's going to make him a great leader. Why is he going to all of a sudden change his mind and kill Moses? We're told why in verse 25. Then Zipporah, Moses' wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me." So he let him go. And then she said, "You are a husband of blood because of this circumcision." And then that's the end of the scene. Why bring that up? Some of the commentaries that I was reading, and it kind of makes sense. This is a lot of guesswork. I couldn't see anything in the Bible specifically to this, but we do know a couple of things. One, his firstborn was circumcised, and the second one wasn't. And it was a big deal that he wasn't. A big enough deal to where God was going to punish Moses with death if it wasn't done. We see Zipporah's reaction after performing this ceremony of circumcising her baby boy. We don't know how old he was, but she wasn't happy about it. Now, a bridegroom of blood to me. She was not happy about performing this. So some of the commentators were saying that they're really in agreement. Take that for what it's worth. That it was the first time that it happened, she was not happy about it. And so as a result, Moses didn't do the second one. He refrained because of his wife's sensibilities. But then we see here Zipporah's willingness to do this. They would, maybe I shouldn't say this, but at least with Teddy, I kind of wanted to be there when they did it. I'm weird though. But I can't imagine having to do the circumcision myself, much less the mama do that. And we see Zipporah doing that because of love of her husband, but also because of the love of her children. Mamas are willing to do what's necessary to protect their children, to protect the family. Let's turn now to Ruth and Jesus, caring for your mother. Ruth is from a foreign land, was from a people that Israel was not supposed to intermarry with. They were told specifically, do not marry the sons and the daughters. Don't let your sons marry their daughters and vice versa. Well, this family didn't listen. And they moved there, and then all of the men died, except for the Naomi, the mother, and then her daughter-in-laws. Ruth was one of those. And they all wanted to go with her. But Ruth said, no, you need to go back to your own families, to your own land. And so the one did. He said, Ruth said, I'm not going to leave you. Your God will be my God. Your people, my people. Where you live, I'll live. I want to take care of you. And then we see this story. The love story in the book of Ruth isn't just about Ruth and Boaz, but it's about Ruth and Naomi, the mother-in-law and the daughter. That really, by the end of it, you wouldn't even say that it's a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law, but a mother and daughter relationship. One that Ruth went out, and it wasn't just that she was taking care of Ruth was taking care of herself, sure, but she was taking care of Naomi as well. We see this relationship blossom between Ruth and Naomi. Turn to John chapter 19. Jesus is there on the cross. Picture the scene. His head is bleeding from the crown of thorns. He's been up for 24 hours plus. He's been beaten within an inch of his life with whips. And now he's hanging on a cross after being nailed to it through his hands and feet. His back is raw and bleeding, and he's rubbing it up and down on this pole because you can't breathe if you're outstretched like this. You've got to get up so your lung can expand and then drop back down. And so every time, that's all going on. And we have a couple of sayings that Jesus says from the cross. One of those, one of the last things that we have recorded that he says while he's on the cross, is about his mom. Now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing by, that would be John, he said to his mother, Woman, behold your son. And he said to the disciple, Behold your mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her to his own home. Taking care of your mother when times are tough, when she can't maybe take care of herself anymore, or when you know that you're not going to be there to watch out. That's an important job for the children to do for their parents. And oftentimes we forget about that aspect of the relationship, of how often our moms took care of us. And then as life progresses, as time moves on, the roles kind of reverse, don't they? And you can't help but think and know that that's the way God wanted it. That's the way God expected us to live our life. Of not just growing up and forgetting the way our parents treated us and the things that our parents taught us, but that we should take care of our parents when they're old and can't take care of themselves anymore. We see Jesus doing that exact thing. Mothers play an important role in our lives. And oftentimes, we come and on Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever it is, and we hear these lessons about a good mother, of what a good parent is, of how the relationship should act and work and look. And I like taking a step and looking at these women in all the aspects of their role, not just of being a good mom in a spiritual sense, but being a good mom in the physical sense, of being a good spiritual leader for the children. As the husband's the leader of the house, moms play a very important leadership role in that as well. I'm gone during football season from, I don't even see them until I get home at 6 o'clock. And then during the regular year, I see them, a little bit earlier, 3:30, sometimes 4, maybe a little bit earlier if I sneak out. I don't do that though, Linda. I never sneak out early. But between those hours that I'm gone, my wife's the one who's there, taking care of them physically, but also taking care of them spiritually. I'm standing up here. She's the one taking care of them back there, and it's like wrestling 3 snakes sometimes, trying to get them to do what they're supposed to. Moms play an important, vital role in the home. Moms play an important, vital role in the church. One of the best ways that the church grows is through parents bringing up their children in the Lord. And moms play such an important role in that. We each can play that role. Paul was never married that we know of, didn't have any kids, and yet he oftentimes talks about being a spiritual father to those who he converted. We see a husband and wife in Acts being this team to preach the law, to preach the truth to the lost. It's not just the physical mothers, but it's those spiritual mothers, those women who have been here and lived their life as a faithful follower of God. And has been an example to those younger men and women of how they should live their life as well. That's certainly something, we haven't looked at the scriptures, but that's certainly an aspect that is so vital in the church family. Of those spiritual mothers being that example to the moms. We each should provide that spiritual guidance to the lost. We need to be the salt of the earth, protecting. We need to be that example of being there and putting God first. We need to be the example for the lost in all aspects of life. We can help care both physically and spiritually for our brothers and sisters, though, can't we? Just as Naomi and Ruth had that relationship, while they weren't physical mother and daughter, they were more family than maybe someone who was just a fellow brother and sister in Christ. But what closer relationship should we have? If we take and put our physical family first, the way I suggested that Moses put his physical family first, he didn't want to upset his wife Zipporah. And so he didn't do what God wanted him to, and as a result, it was going to cost him his life. Moses put that physical relationship first. We can't put God second, even over our family. It's a day for mothers. We'll have a day for fathers. We'll have a day for veterans coming up here. We'll have a day for, fill in the blank. And while we each play a unique role in the family and in the church, it is nice, though, to take a step back and consider the benefits and the wisdom of God in making moms such a vital role in the family and in the church. I know this lesson hadn't been so much about how to become a Christian, but it's not a difficult thing to do, but it is a decision that is a lifelong decision. And it's one that, once made, is that first step into a home of heaven. You can repent of your sins and have them washed in baptism this morning and be a part of the church, be a part of the Lord's kingdom, and be a part of His family. If you need the prayers of the congregation for encouragement, for forgiveness, if you would like to be added to the church, won't you come as we stand and sing?